So today I want to talk about imposter syndrome. Now, I've had a lot of difficulty in doing this, and I've also written a quite big section, sort of 3 very tiny chapters on this in my book about fear of success. And imposter syndrome is one of those things that's coming up an awful lot in different areas, business and in personal self-growth, self-development and personal growth. Yes. Anyway, so imposter syndrome is one of these expressions and ideas, and it's very much connected to fear of success, but it's a very difficult one because it's very interconnected and involved in fear of success. And so what I'd like to do is I'm going to talk about this, being aware that this is a huge subject, and being aware that I've already written a small section on it in my book, which talks about imposter syndrome in the way that we commonly talk about it in business and personal development circles, which is really defining it as the feeling that we are an imposter when we're going to do something. Now, if we look at it in this regard, what we are saying is that the feeling imposter syndrome is a lie, and the truth is that we are what we say we are, what we're trying to be. And so the lie is that we're the imposter, and the truth is we are the real person. So for example, if we're talking about being a doctor, the imposter will be that I'm not a doctor. The truth is that we are a doctor. And that's the way we commonly think about imposter syndrome. Okay? So it's a bit like the word success. When I wrote a book about fear of success, I had to obviously think about what does success really mean, and what is real fear of real success, or false fear of real success, or real fear of false success. And it starts to become, and I like to think in this way because I am a mathematician, I have a degree in maths, it starts to become looking at a very difficult diagram on the board. If this is true, then that is not true, and this kind of thing. And I'll be honest, it's one of the things that I've explored a lot. Most of my other books really talk much more about things like love than success. And love, again, is one of these words we use in so many different ways. And so trying to understand the truth about love can take an awful long time. But when we really understand love, we understand how simple it is and how beautiful it is. So with imposter syndrome, what I've talked about in the book is when imposter syndrome is a part of the problem. So for example, that feeling stops us from stepping in and doing what we are actually capable of doing. Now, I experience this a lot, and I get very frustrated with it when I'm working with other people, because I'm like, come on, do this or do this. And then I can't. I'm like, yes, I know you can do this. And I always remember when I was teaching Zumba, and I'd be teaching cumbia or salsa or some complicated move. And so obviously I'm watching my students, my participants, to see how they're doing. And I could see how beautifully they were doing. And they would come up to me at the end and they would say, I just can't get this move. And I would say, what move? They go, this move. Like, I saw you do that 10 times perfectly in the class. I didn't do it. I can't do it. I say, I watched your body do that. So the mind is kind of behind the body. The mind is saying, I can't do this, and the body's already done it. And I think that's very true of things like imposter syndrome when it comes to being a parent. So very often, sometimes people don't feel like they're really a mum, even if they're pregnant, even if they're having a baby. It doesn't feel real. So there's that kind of thing. Then I talk about imposter syndrome as a solution. And one of the reasons is that sometimes we need to not believe in something in order to achieve it. And I was thinking this morning about a wonderful monk. I think he's more of an abbot actually. It's a Khenpo in Bhutan, and Khenpo is actually a title, which I discovered when I was looking him up and thought, I think his first name was Khenpo. And it's like, no, it's like Reverend or something like that. And I always remember when he was leaving us, we had the most amazing time. I wrote about all this in my book. That is the book, Camino de la Luna, Truth. Yeah, so I wrote about Bhutan in courage and in truth, but that part is in truth, which is a great part for it to be in, because in, I think it was about an hour that we had with this amazing teacher. He just kind of blew our minds. And it's kind of like you get taught something for an hour, and then it's when you spend 3 years trying to practice and master what this person's taught. And as he was leaving, he said, right, I have to go swimming now. He said, so I tried it, and he's in Bhutan, there's not a lot of swimming pools. I think there may be like 1 or 2 in Parawatimpu, which are the capital and the city that you fly into. So they're quite, I would say big cities. They're like, they're not big cities. It's like one road. Anyway, no, there's more than one road, but there's like, Main Street is like, one little road. And I want to say it's one road because I think that's a beautiful thing, but I don't want to disrespect them. And I've been to places which really are literally one road, so not quite that. But as he said he decided when he was older he would learn to swim, and he had a swimming teacher, and at some point she turned around to him and said, I'm sorry, you'll never learn to swim. And he said, excuse me now, I have to leave you all, I'm going swimming. So for him, at some point, the fact that somebody told him you'll never learn to swim got him moving, got him going. And sometimes that imposter syndrome, when we think, I'm never going to do this, I can't do this, the not knowing, the not believing enables us to achieve and to do what we think was impossible. And I think that sometimes I do that. If I'm sitting thinking about doing something, I think, how would I feel if I could never do this? How would I feel if I never got to do this or go to this place? And sometimes I think, I'll be all right. And then I realise it's really not that important to me. And other times I think, no, I have to do that. I have to do that. It's funny, I was rereading Eat, Pray, Love this morning, and in it, Elizabeth Gilbert's talking about trying to do a particular meditation. And the moment that the door was bolted and she couldn't get out, and how she was so frantic to go and do this thing that she said she didn't want to do. And it's quite funny when we think we're about to miss a train or a plane, or and I think that's one of those things that's very important when we think about coaching and selling. And sometimes people sell on a kind of like, you've got to do this today, and and it can be very effective to help us decide what's important, but also sometimes it can be, you go down the high street and there's you're going down the high street and there's a sale, and it's like 1 day sale. If that pulls you into the shop when you don't really want to go in, there's nothing really to buy, you think, did it really serve you? But on the other hand, sometimes if you know it's the last day and you actually have to do something or not, it gets you motivated to do the things you really want to do. And the other thing I talked about imposter syndrome was it was really about imposter syndrome as an origin. So for example, when we are growing up and we're taught that something is impossible for us, and it is a bit personal, isn't it? It's a bit like, you'll never do this, or people from our background don't do this, or people from our religion, race, gender, whatever, don't do this. And I always say that's a lot of that origin of imposter syndrome is sometimes it's societal, it's familial, so when we break through those barriers, we're not just healing ourselves, we're healing society. The first person, for example, I always hear in American programs was like, this is the first person in the family to go to college, and I always think, okay, so that's like it's breaking a familial boundary, a familiar imposter syndrome. Or the first woman to do something or whatever. yeah, you can see my interest in that. I'm like, I don't want to be the first woman to do something. I want to be the first person to do it. I like to be the first person to do it. That interests me. Although I did for a very long time when I was working in film, I really wanted to be the first woman to win a Best Director Oscar. And then a woman won it, and I was like, oh, done now. There's no point now. Somebody's won it. Yeah, I'll never be the first woman. I'll never be the first woman on the, to plant the flag and all the rest. So anyway, those are ways of looking at imposter syndrome. If imposter syndrome equals the way that we're looking at it currently, okay. And as I say, when I was talking and working and exploring love, sometimes it was important for me to go back and go to a deeper, more universal understanding of something. And so what's really important with imposter syndrome is also to look at that in terms of what I call the very basics of fear of success. And I have explored 5 different types of fear of success. And if we take a deeper look at those basics, we can start to see where imposter syndrome might actually not be imposter syndrome, and it might be something else. So this might be the most valuable part of this. So in the book, I didn't write about this because I wrote about those other things under their true name. So I would advise you, not just because I want to sell the book, but because it's a very good book and it covers all the areas. If you read through it and something rings a bell, it may be because your imposter syndrome is not imposter syndrome. What do I mean? Now, one of the things I did touch on is when imposter syndrome is denial. And one of the things I talk about a lot is that fear of success can be and is part of a grieving process. And a lot of that is about letting go of the person that we used to be, letting go of the life that we used to have, letting go of the relationships that we used to have. Because in order to move on in our lives and to grow and to evolve, things change, and we will not be who we were. We will graduate and move on to a different level of life. So for example, it's a bit like when we go from 6th form to university, or university to, might go from a bachelor's degree to an undergraduate degree, and then we will go on to something like a PhD, and our relationships will change. And gosh, it was so much fun to be a fresher. It was so much fun to be in the first year. Second year was really, really tough at university, because that's just the way it is. So as we move on, of course we resist. And sometimes that can be the reason that people constantly fail things. They want to stay where they are. But obviously where we are doesn't stay the same. It changes. So at a certain point we want to stay where we are. But if everybody else is moving on, that time just doesn't exist anymore. And I remember there's a beautiful part of a book by Brené Brown where she talks about heartbreak. And she talks about, she quotes some chap, and he says, there's a heartbreak involved when he looks back at his children when they were so small, and he recognises that they're never going to be, those children are gone because they grew up. And makes me feel a bit like Peter Pan, that thing of like never wanting to grow up. But that movement, that change, that evolution, if I look back at my nieces and nephews, it's heartbreaking when you see them and you think, of course I love who they are now, but I miss desperately the time when they were, and I'll come back to this, that time, and I love that time, when they were little, and every time they did something, they went, look at me, look at me, look at me, Ma, not mummy, but auntie, Pelly, 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 come here, come here, come here, come here. So what is this? What is this? I want to tell you something. I want to show you something. Look at my thing. Look at this. I can jump off the high board. I can, look, I can swim. I can swim. Let me show you this. Let me show you that. Look what I can do. Look what I can do. Let me show you bounce on the trampoline. And it's so sad when they go past that time. And it's like, I wish, I think more than anything, I wish that I had, if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, enjoy this moment, because I know it's really tiring and everything, but this It's so beautiful, this moment when they just want your attention so much. And then when they're teenagers, they're like, don't want, no, they don't want your attention so much. So that was really that thing about heartbreak and about moving on. And it's so hard sometimes to let go, because most of the time if we're letting go of something, it's not all bad. There's good there as well. But we know that we need to move on. We know that we need to change. And something pulls us forward and pulls us on and changing. And so there's always a little bit of grieving associated to success. There's a little, and also I want to come back to a very important part of that in a moment, and the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome, denial, and really how we try and protect ourselves. Now, I hope this is not getting too complicated for you, and I hope that really what I'm saying, even if the words are not making sense, that the feeling can come across and you can understand the energy, the energy of what we're talking about with imposter syndrome. Because the words themselves are nothing. Because what you might be watching as thinking about imposter syndrome, but what you're actually suffering from is something different. So I hope that this will serve you, and I'm sure it will, because I think that everybody comes to the right teacher at the right time. So this element of denial that we have in our fear of success as we're moving forward. So sometimes when we are faced with a situation and we don't believe we're capable of something, we don't believe we can do it, we're holding ourselves back, we're denying that ability to move forward. And when we look at grief, denial is so important, it's so powerful, and it's so necessary. Because we can't grieve all in one day. We have to do it slowly. It's like fitness. I did my basic training for Zumba in one day. I did not become an instructor in one day. Like I said, when I had that wonderful session with Kempo, maybe 1 hour, but the amount of time I have spent thinking about what he said, going back over it, and learning the lessons that he was trying to teach, it takes a long time. But our denial is perfect, and it's necessary for us because we cannot cope with grief all in one go, and it serves us. But then at a certain point, the denial becomes the problem. And this is something that I believe we are struggling with most in the Western world, because we have so many ways to distract our attention. We have so many ways to stay in denial, to stay in comfort. So for example, if I am grieving and it's so hard, I may go and watch a movie, or I may walk away from a situation, or I may go and work and put my head in work so I don't have to think about the grief or the person I've lost. But the problem is that when we do that, the grief is still there. We still have the problem. We still haven't digested it. We still haven't resolved it. We still haven't moved into the final stage of grief, which is acceptance. So sometimes when things have been very difficult for us, our moving forward and finding success pushes us out of a stagnating period, a period of denial that has lasted too long. And I say that, but I think everything happens naturally. So what I say is, the moment you are ready, you will go. The moment you're ready, you will go. And to be honest, we have to go a little bit before we're ready, because it's only in the doing that we become ready. So until I write a book, I can't write a book. I tell myself I can't write a book. But if I keep writing and I keep moving forward, then at a certain point I wake up and I realise I can no longer deny who and what I am. I can no longer deny my skills, my power, my capabilities, because I've become so far that I cannot help but look back and see, yeah, okay. And also it helps when other people ask you to help and you think, okay. I used to find that with Zumba, I would just get my head down and be going, and suddenly I'm teaching 15 classes a week. And then I remember I went to a training and I was sitting there and we were all going around in a circle like, oh yeah, so my name's so and so, I teach 2 classes, I teach 3 classes. And I was like, I teach 15 classes a week. And I was like, oh, okay. And to say it in a room full of quite successful instructors was a bit like, oh, I see what happened. And that's often what happens with our imposter syndrome, that we're getting far enough down the track that we cannot hide anymore. We can't be in denial anymore. And there is another aspect of imposter syndrome I want to touch on very, very quickly. I'm not going to go into it deeply. I want to explain something personal and explain something else about imposter syndrome. I just want to touch on one thing. And it's the use of the phrase imposter syndrome. And one of the things that often happens when we get to a stage of evolution in personal development or spirituality, and we understand something, and actually this is something that Kempo taught me as well, and all religious teachers will tell you and teach you. Every time we find something, the ego will try and use it against us. So, for example, we discover meditation, fantastic. Then the ego will say, oh, well, you're not doing it properly unless you're doing it 17 times a day or whatever. And it's very difficult because it's a bit like fitness, a bit like exercise. We want to say, yes, do it. It's really good for you. It's really good for you. But then the ego will say, well, you have to do it every day, or you're not doing it properly if you're not doing this. And one of my great teachers, Gurmukh, who teaches Kundalini Yoga, used to say, if you sweat and you smile every day, that's what makes a person happy, healthy and whole. So if you're worried about how much fitness you're doing, if you sweat every day, good. You're worried about your happiness, if you smile every day, great, that's good. You don't have to meditate every day, because eventually you will realize that we're always meditating. So the ego gets hold of things, and also other people get hold of it. Their egos get hold of it. Whether that's your friends, whether that's your family, whether it's people you relate to in business. And one of the big ones that annoys me at the moment is resilience. Resilience is this word. And then obviously people who want you to do what they want you to do will take the word resilience and use it against you. And they'll use it against you by saying, well, you need to work on your resilience. You need to do this. What they're really saying is, you need to do what I'm telling you to do and I want you to do. And that's not what resilience is really about. Resilience is not, hey, let me fill up my tank, let me prepare and get really good at doing everything so that I can then fix your beep, unless that's part of what I do, But it's one of those things that very often, say for example, meditation, if you start talking to people, and I've written a great book called Meditation for Angry People. And what I like about it is very down to earth, and it's not about going and sitting on a mountaintop. Although I've done that, it's very nice. But it's about meditation being a tool. And like all these tools, it's really a tool for getting out of denial and living your life, getting on with it. Because life is for the living, We are here to be human and to have amazing experiences. So all the spiritual stuff is there, it supports us and it serves us. But it's not the goal. The goal is to be happy humans, to be free humans, to be who we are, to be successful and authentic and all those things. So the problem with the words imposter syndrome are that some people are going to take that and use it against you. So when you say, I really don't feel like I should be doing this, or I am doing this, or this doesn't feel right to me, they'll tell you you've got imposter syndrome. And you might think you've got imposter syndrome. But what it's really saying is, it's not imposter syndrome if it's true. It's not imposter syndrome if you are saying to others and to yourself, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this. And somebody else is saying to you, yes, you can. Yes, you will. And it's not about volition. Sometimes it's not about, I don't want to do this. Because I've been in that situation before so many times. This is why I get a little bit cross. Do you see that cross? When I say to somebody, I can't do this. Now I say that to myself all the time, and I'm lying all the time. And I say, I can do it, I'll just do it anyway. But sometimes I cannot do it. Sometimes today is not my day. Sometimes today is not your day. And sometimes today is somebody else's day. I need to do something, serve somebody else. I need to serve who I need to serve today. That's it. So if somebody says to me, well, the reason you're turning this down or not doing this is because you've got imposter syndrome, of course I'm going to go and think about it. I'm going to ask myself. But the truth may be, it is not right for you. It is not authentic. It is not who you are supposed to be, who you're meant to be, who you want to be. Or it may not be right for you right now. And that's one of the other things that sometimes, I can be asked to do something I would love to do on a different day. I would love to do if I had all the time and energy and money in the world. But it takes me away from things that are more important, higher in priority. And it's very important because I looked at this at the very beginning of Fear of Success, of my book, 5 different types of fear of success. So we're talking about fear of false success, fear of what happens if I actually achieve this thing that everyone tells me I'm supposed to want and do and be, like, for example, becoming a parent. It might not be right for you. There you go. Or the type of parent you want to be. That's okay. The other thing is fear of consequences of success. So sometimes that can be false also. We can think that something will happen if we do something, but it's actually our ego just telling us, that's going to happen. And the other one is, a big part of it is, and I forget the way of phrasing this, it is fear of being, doing and having what we falsely believe we need to be, do or have in order to be successful. It's a long, long thing, isn't it? But what I mean is, for example, if somebody says to you, in order to do this, you have to do that. Or it's something we've built and believed in our own mind. And some of that's about evolution. So some of that's about, if I want to, I'm trying to not avoid real examples of people I'm working with because I don't want to embarrass anybody. So for example, here we go, here's a good one. When I became a Zumba instructor, so if somebody said to me, right, you have to get your ETM, your exercise to music certificate in order to be a Zumba instructor. Now I would have loved to have done that, but I was actually, as soon as I started teaching, I was so busy, and it didn't feel like that to me at the time. At the time I was struggling to get classes and that kind of thing. But actually, if I look back, it was really quick from going from having 1 class to 2 classes to 3 classes. And also I was so tired because obviously I was a beginner, so it took me a really long time to learn new tracks. It took me a really long time to learn how to be a Zumba Gold instructor, which is a slightly different structure. Plus all the other things of running a business, like the accounting, the kit, the laundry, all those things. So when I was getting started, I knew that this was in the back of my mind, was something I needed to do. And some people would say, you cannot do it without that. Now, I did for a really long time. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about teaching without that certificate. It's just industry standard that you have that certificate and that training. So I did a lot of other things. I did first aid training. I also did training for working with special populations, for dancing with people in the chair. I did lots of trainings, and some of them were more or less useful. So for example, the one about working with people in a chair, the first day was incredible. And then I did another 3 or 4 days on different days, and they were completely useless. And it was so annoying because I was like, well, I know more about this. And then I think the very last day, which was overrunning, the last 30 seconds, I got some useful tips. So it was really annoying, that training, I will tell you. It's probably a bit like this. You're right, the beginning was good, the ending is good, all the other bit in the middle wasn't for me. But that's okay, because this is for a lot of different people. So I apologise if it's not quite right for you. And I hope you get what you need out of it. But actually, when I actually finally did my exercise to music and my level 2 aqua, I learnt some very, very useful things, most of which were that all exercise is, a certain, once you start, really up to an hour of exercise every day is pretty much, the benefits are so incredible. that we should all be doing it, we should all be teaching it, and we shouldn't be worrying about who's got a certificate or not, seriously. But also when I tried to then teach my classes in that way, because I needed to video it and then pass my practical training, my class hated it. They hated to be taught that way. So it was really kind of lucky that I didn't do that training earlier, because I wouldn't have been so successful, because it was actually at odds with what I was doing, and what I was doing was more appropriate for me and for my students, and I think moving forward, than that old-fashioned kind of teaching. And also what was quite funny is I did my exam, I did a proxy exam, and I didn't cheat, but I got something like nearly 100% in my written exam, because I'm very good at written exams. And then when I did the practical and I videoed it and I sent them in, they thought I was cheating because they said my practical was so bad. Which was really, it was so bad because it was different to, I didn't want to teach that way. I didn't want to teach that way. So that's okay. In the end, you sort of think, well, I'm not that kind of instructor. And likewise, here's the thing that happened when I was working in the city, and I was doing presentations, things like that. I was supposed to be doing the presentations, but more and more I was a financial analyst. So I've actually worked as a financial analyst in the city, because they kept firing all the financial analysts, and somebody had to do it, to put that work into the presentations. And that was after they decided that they weren't going to pay for me to train some investment qualification that they decided I needed, and I resisted that. I was like, I don't want an investment qualification. I don't do investment. All I do is make it look pretty. I do the diagrams. So they kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I was like, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be that person. And they kept saying, oh yes, you want to do this, you want to do this, and they kept pushing me, and I ended up doing the financial analysis because I had to do it. And then one day I turned around and quit. And I'm so glad I didn't do that training, because to me it was like I didn't believe in it. I didn't want to learn that. And I'm really glad they didn't make me do that in the end. But it's very difficult when you're working in an environment and everyone's like, oh, you've got to get this qualification, or you've got to do this, you've got to do that, you've got to do this. And the truth is that very often, sometimes the people with no qualifications are often much better. It's like the Henry Ford thing with his car manufacturing, and he had all these older people in there, and they kept saying, oh no, you can't do that, oh no, you can't do that. He said, can you get me some 19-year-olds that don't know that it can't be done, and we'll get it done. Like they say, sometimes the beginner's mind is so much more powerful, because you can see 20, 30 possibilities, whereas an expert will just see the path that they've already taken. So we always need to try to strive for the beginner's mind. Anyway, nearly done. And just think, if you'd come to this talk, it would have taken you hours. Isn't virtual teaching so much better? Yes? And it's free. It's great. So the other thing I wanted to say is, okay, so have a little patience with me. I was thinking about this today, and about the denial that we have with success. So I want to tell you a story. And it's related to the story I told you before about all the little kids that say, look at me, look at me, look at me. Now, so a couple of years ago, I had many revelations when I was travelling and I was doing different things. And this one happened on a road in South Africa near Johannesburg. And it was about visibility and being scared. And I decided no more hiding. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I was going to be open and be out in the world, and my books were going to come out and everyone's going to see me, and it was going to be great. And one of the things that happens when we succeed is we want to say, look at me, look at how wonderful this is, look at how beautiful this is. We want people to be around us and to celebrate our success, because it's so natural to do that. When we learn to jump off the high board, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me bounce on the trampoline, look at me publish my first book. It's so beautiful, and it's so natural, and it's so perfect, and we get beaten up for it in our world now, We get told that that's part of the ego, and it's not. It's joy. It's pure joy to be able to say, I'm so proud of what I've done. I want to celebrate that. And it's very painful if there are people we want to see us and to share our success with who are not there or not able to share in our success for their own reasons. And I was thinking, one of the things that makes me sad, and a story that keeps coming up for me lately, is when my granddad was 65 years old, and I was studying for my maths degree. And I remember calling him and apologising that I wasn't going to make it to his 65th birthday party. And he totally understood, and I don't think they really missed me that much, because, they were really good at having parties. My grandparents, they had good parties. And I saw the photos and they looked like they had a good time. And but I didn't know that he wouldn't make 70. He wouldn't see his 70th birthday, and that's quite sad. But one of the things that I'm so joyful about, even though I don't look joyful, a bit tearful, was that a year or so later than that, when I did get my maths degree at University of Southampton, and I did stand up in my gown with no cap, because we don't do caps at University of Southampton, we do hoods. My grandparents were there with my mum and my brother and my sister and my boyfriend, and they all stood up with me, and they all watched me walk up and get my degree in mathematics. And my grandfather was an aeronautical engineer, and he was so proud when I even was looking at doing A-levels in mathematics. And I was his first grandchild to go to a university graduation ceremony. And sadly, I think I was the only one that he got to go to the graduation ceremony with. And what a wonderful thing. What a wonderful, wonderful thing, and a gift, and those photos. And I have a photo of the two of us at the party afterwards. And, he did so much for us when we were growing up. And I think that gave him real joy to see that achievement and that success. And I'm so grateful that we had those moments. But this morning sat and I thought about what I'm doing now, and all the books that I'm writing, and the achievements, and all the wonderful things that I've managed to do in my life, one way or another. And it causes me great sense of sadness that my father did never, and will never, as he's passed away, will never, ever be there and present and able to see my achievements. And so as we step forward into succeeding and being who we are, and being who we truly are, and loving what we do, it's okay that also helps us to grieve, and to grieve for the people that we've lost, because it's the reality of that they are no longer here to celebrate with us, and they are no longer here in this life, in this human life, to be part of that joy. And it's okay, but what's important is that we and I do not hold myself back and ward off that success and those joys and that celebration because of that sadness. Because then I'm punishing myself for the fact that my father's passed away. I'm holding myself back because he's not there for me to say, look at me, look at me, look at what I did. And so I hope that this helps. And maybe this is for you, just for you, to say, it's okay. It's okay as we come out of denial and we go through this grieving process to be sad. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. There is nothing shameful about grief. There is nothing shameful about being sad sometimes. Even Buddha got sad because he lost people who he loved. And it's embracing that beautiful part of life. It is a beautiful part of life to love people, no matter who they are or what they're like, against all odds. And as I said, when we really truly understand love, we know it's eternal, we know it goes on forever. But it's okay if we stay with the feeling of being sad that the success can bring. And that's okay. And success is a challenge, it's when I wrote the book, Fear of Success, it's not to say it's all unicorns and rainbows and fluffy things. The first Christmas that we experience after somebody has passed away, or we've had a breakup with somebody, or a divorce, we're going to have some negatives. Even if it's a loss of something or someone that, we didn't have somebody with us. So, for example, we might have been, and again, going back to motherhood, we might have been pregnant and lost a child. And so that first Christmas that we experience without them can be very, very painful. And so we have to take our time. We have to take it at our own pace when it comes to success, celebrating, and being who we are. Because being who we are is really, it's life, it's living. And as I say in the book, fear of success is really fear of life. It's fear of life, it's fear of living, it's fear of feeling our own emotions and being true to who and what we are. So as you can see from that, and to finish this off, because, I wrote a whole book about this. We could go on forever. There'll be more. But imposter syndrome it's so bound up in all those different things. And that denial, and also in sometimes being pushed to be who we are, who we're not as well. So it's bittersweet sometimes. Success can be very bittersweet. And that's okay. And if I can make you a promise, it is this. I will make you this promise. And this is actually something I've used a lot, and I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to end this because I get on forever. The film analogy that I always use, the story I always use from films, is actually from Top Gun. And if you haven't seen it, it's a really good film. And there's a moment, I don't want to give it away, so if you haven't watched Top Gun, stop now, but otherwise I'll just finish with Top Gun. And bye-bye if you have to go. But the thing about Top Gun is when there's an accident and Top Gun Maverick loses his best friend and he loses Goose, and then he struggles because he to be in a plane without his best friend, without his navigator, co-pilot, I don't even know what he was, what he did. What did Goose do? I don't remember. But the idea, but what happens before he even tries to get out there again is that the widow of his best friend, played by Meg Ryan, one of her good roles, and she comes out and she says to him, and she says, and this is the truth of it, she says, he would have hated to fly without you. He would have hated it, but he'd have done it. Because you got to do what you are. You got to be who you are. No matter how much time sometimes it kills you because you're doing it without the person that should be with you. It feels like so unfair that they're not with you. It's so unfair that you don't get to do everything with the people that you love. And it's not right, it's not good, it's not fair. It's just nature. It's just the way that it is. And we have to eventually learn to accept things as they have happened, and in the perfection of that life, of our life. Even though it feels impossible at times to think we're ever going to get over it, and we're ever going to move on or accept or finish grieving. Feels like it's going to go on forever. Roll it does. But I will tell you that it's worth it. It's worth it to keep pushing through, to keep living your life, and to keep finding and defining success. And there's nothing better than being who you truly are. Okay? Lots of love. See you soon. Bye.